You might know who Matt Groening is, but do you really? While fairly open to interviews and public appearances, he had virtually no internet footprint for the longest time. So although many people love The Simpsons, Futurama, and Disenchantment, it's hard to know what Matt loves best of all about his first golden yellow goose. Fortunately, he gave an interview to Entertainment Weekly in the year 2000, listing 10 of his favourite episodes. Some of them are bona fide classics, others don't get talked about as much. So I thought it would be fun to go through the list and give my own opinions on his opinions. Number 10, There's No Disgrace Like Home. Starting early, episode 4 early, Matt Groening says, the animation is pretty crude, but it does have one of the funniest sequences of the series. At Dr. Marvin Monroe's Family Therapy Center, the Simpsons end up giving each other simultaneous shock therapy. Editing this sequence was difficult because we were laughing so much at the Simpsons screaming. When I went over Tom Kenny's favorite SpongeBob episodes last year, it wasn't a surprise that the pilot, Help Wanted, topped the list. And There's No Disgrace Like Home seems to have a snug place on Matt's list for a very similar reason. Season 1 was notoriously riddled with trial and error, but it's wonderful going back to it and seeing all the ways the show figured itself out. The shock therapy scene feels like the first classic Simpsons routine as we know it now, just surprising addition on top of surprising addition to a hilarious concept. The big point of contention most people have with the episode retroactively is grouchy old Walter Matthau Homer, and while they make it clear he's not so above it all against the rest of the family's dysfunctionality, it's nothing like how he's characterized from this point onward. All the more reason to rewatch it, if not as a novelty. At number 9, there's Krusty Gets Busted. I have a peculiar love for TV clownery. We had to do multiple vocal takes of Krusty's heart attack during a commercial for Krusty brand pork products because Dan Castellaneta as Krusty kept making us bust out laughing. A lip-smacking clown leering at frying bacon, muttering,
listening, sizzling,
before collapsing in agony? That just tickles my funny bone. I'm really happy that this is also a gag so memorable and timeless that no one's really concerned with it coming from season 1. Krusty Gets Busted is a standout showing of how quickly the early team got their act together, and were able to make something that fit the vision of everyone involved. Just look at how different Homer acts, how much bigger the scope is, and how many characters play a part in the story. It goes without saying that this episode did a very good job of presenting what Krusty means to Bart, in entertainment value and as a public figure, and putting that on the line in a way that makes us think critically about fandom culture and media outrage. And of course, Kelsey Grammer is excellent as Sideshow Bob from day one. Most fans would rank Cape Fear as their favorite Bob episode, but it's nice to see the one that started it all on such a prestigious list. Next up is Natural Born Kisses, the newest episode on the list. Though note, it was less than 2 years old when this interview was published. That's a strange perspective for someone my age with how ancient all the Golden Age episodes look now. The network censors couldn't believe it, and neither could I. The cow at the peephole while Homer and Marge make love in a hayloft, neighbors groping Homer when he and Marge are caught nude inside the windmill at the Sir Putzelot mini-golf course, Homer dangling naked from a hot air balloon, his ass dragging against the glass of a crystal cathedral-like church. This is one of the edgiest episodes they've ever done, going much further into Homer and Marge's love life than usual. I feel like its popularity is a little overblown. It does start to get crude for the sake of being crude, but it's a relatively funny and much more raunchy take on the show that needs to be seen to be believed. No other episode would dare make a pun out of ass forking. It does have an innocent B-plot about Bart and Lisa hunting treasure to keep things family friendly. It's alright, but that's clearly all it's meant to be. The 7th place ranking goes to Treehouse of Horror 7. This Halloween episode features my favourite Kang and Kodo story, in which our slobbering one-eyed aliens morph into Bob Dole and Bill Clinton. Golden moment?
I suppose you want to probe me. Well, might as well get it over with.
Stop! We have reached the limits of what rectal probing can teach us.
This isn't an all too common pick. 5 has topped the Treehouse of Horror series in general fan consensus, but I can see why Citizen Kang sticks out to Matt Groening. Many Futurama episodes satirize US presidents, and that show had started by this time. My own opinions on the other two segments are still very positive. The Genesis tub's a little short but funny and intriguing all the same, and The Thing and I is great in every way. I don't have the nerve to argue with it. Treehouse of Horror 7 is particularly well-rounded, even if I know why you guys are gonna sing Citizen Kang's praises every 4 years. Number 6 is the ever-provocative Homer's Enemy. As we explore what it would be like to actually work alongside Homer Simpson, Hank Azaria is great as Frank Grimes, Homer's stressed-out new co-worker. We've had many funny funerals on this show, but Grimes' send-off, which Homer sleeps through, is perhaps the most touching and hilarious. Touching isn't the word I would use, mate. What else is there to say about this episode? Whether you find it to be a gut-busting romp with a self-aware edge and a great moral to not fuss over the unfairness of life, or a cold, macabre look into how twisted the reality of Springfield had gotten, it's one unforgettable episode. Like Natural Born Kisses, this one has a cutesy B-plot with Bart and Milhouse running an abandoned factory, which isn't some wacky filler. It exemplifies how strange the stories are gotten by Season 8, while still serving as an allegory that your lot in life is never predictable. Homer may be everything wrong with America, but Homer's Enemy is everything right with this turning point in the show and its evolution. Number 5, In Marge We Trust. Kind of an odd choice for a top 5 ranking, especially right after Homer's Enemy, but you know why this is on here. Even by Simpson standards, this is a peculiar episode. Homer freaks out when he finds a Japanese Mr. Sparkle soapbox that bears his likeness.
Mr. Sparkle! Uno yo besto wahoo! Boring.
I can't remember how we get there, but the show ends with Reverend Lovejoy saving Ned Flanders from several crazed zoo baboons. Mr. Sparkle is classic Simpsons iconography. He's such a clever idea. Reaffirm that the Simpsons character designs are offbeat by comparing them to a Japanese mascot. Not as much attention is given to Marge the Listen Lady or Reverend Lovejoy's struggle with his faith, but they both have some good lines all the same. I don't think the baboon fight was the best way to end the episode. It feels like a season 9 or 10 ending in a not great way, but the episode is solid enough with a lot going on. This joke is also very underrated.
Come on, kids. Let's go home.
We are home.
That was fast.
Sitting at 4th place is A Streetcar Named Marge. Matt says, our first major musical episode. Marge is featured in Oh Streetcar, a version of A Streetcar Named Desire directed by the oily Llewellyn Sinclair, played with relish by John Lovitz. There's also Maggie's finest moment, in which she plots a Great Escape-style caper from the Ayn Rand School for Tots. This is an episode I dearly appreciate. It was where they started to become bigger and grander in their pop culture send-ups, but it still has a simple, believable backbone for a story. I don't get that many of the Streetcar or Ayn Rand references, but they still tell the jokes in ways that are just as funny out of context. The Ayn Rand stuff is basically a Rugrats episode. It was even animated by Klasky Shupo, the last Simpsons episode done by them. This episode was rather controversial when it originally aired for its unflattering description of New Orleans, but it's reassuring that everything else is so well remembered. It may not be the most striking season 4 episode, looking at what it's surrounded by, but there's room for something comparatively quaint and down-to-earth. Heading into the top 3 is Much Apu About Nothing, an episode that's just as relevant now as it was in 1996. This episode, satirizing the American anti-immigrant frenzy of the mid-90s, has some of Apu the Quickie Mart clerk's and Police Chief Wiggum's wittiest lines. Sample?
Alright, men, here's the order of deportations. First, we'll be rounding up your tired, then you're poor, then your huddled masses yearning to breathe free.
Besides the political messages, this episode's best known for being a serious look at Apu's status as an American, and by extension, a member of the Springfield community. Obviously, not everything about the character is aged perfectly, but the early seasons did their best to make him one of the most likable and model side characters, and this episode was the payoff for that, throwing him into a big issue that he just about survives. Apu was always a favorite of Matt's, and this story goes to show why. I can't really say much more about it without quoting its classic moments, or expressing my relief that they finally revealed which state Springfield is in. It's not super high on my list, but I respect it as a smart reflection of the times at the very least. Number 2 is Life on the Fast Lane, another Season 1 pick. I can't say I'm surprised. Marge has a near affair with Jacques, her debonair French bowling instructor, played by the brilliant Albert Brooks. The instructor was Swedish in the original, titled Yawn to be Wild, but Brooks wisely changed him to French and improvised much of the hilariously seductive dialogue with Julie Kavner as Marge, most of which was cut for time. Those are some neat old fun facts, and yes, you can listen to those outtakes on the Season 1 DVD, and they are amazing. Next to Cowboy Bob, Jacques is easily the most iconic character Brooks played, and it's nice to see him get some well-earned attention, even though he's a homewrecker. This is some of the slowest and most methodical Season 1 gets, and I can't say the situation is all that funny, but it supplied an engaging and rewarding enough story to be an early classic. It is the second most viewed episode in the show's history after all. A staggering 13% of the US population got to hear the best ending line in all of Simpsons live.
Hey, what'll I tell the boss?
Tell him I'm going to the back seat of my car with a woman I love, and I won't be back for 10 minutes.
The number 1 pick isn't something you see top the list all too often. No Last Exit to Springfield, no You Only Move Twice. For Matt Groening in the year 2000, the greatest episode of The Simpsons is Bart the Daredevil. The scene in which Homer accidentally attempts to skateboard across Springfield Gorge and doesn't make it is pretty funny, but even funnier, for me, the funniest moment in the series is when he's loaded into an ambulance, which then hits a tree, sending Homer back over the cliff while strapped to a gurney. Truly inspired mayhem. I love Homer and the Gorge as much as the next guy, but there's still a lot to love about Bart the Daredevil that I feel goes criminally overlooked. The whole extreme stunts stadium set piece is gritty, edgy, and a cool new environment for Homer and Bart to bond in. And I believe the story has the firmest grasp of their dynamic and how to test it, putting Homer's fairly well-intentioned parenting to the test against Bart's classic rebellious behavior. There's additionally more Bart skateboarding here than any other episode of the show, and it's fun to see the debut of Dr. Hibbert and note how different he is all the way back here. This is honestly one of my favorite episodes of the show. It's floating in the top 20, and it's very gratifying seeing Matt Groening love it so much, even though he was only able to give a few reasons per episode. Looking at the episodes chosen, Seasons 1 and 8 are tied for the most representation, each getting 3 spots, though Season 8 has the higher average. Season 2, 4, 7, and 9 each get 1 spot, but 3, 5, 6, and 10 aren't represented at all. I understand why his era running the show takes up nearly half the list, but it's also odd to me that none of the episodes he had a writing credit on featured. But who am I to argue with the man himself? These 10 episodes clearly meant a lot to him, and you can read a transcript of the article for yourself on the Simpsons Archive. This site's longevity both impresses and disturbs me. Goodbye for now.
Mr. Sparkle! Mr. Sparkle!
Konnichiwa.